This is the Seahawkers podcast, live and uncatfished. I'm Brandon Schultz, and I am flying solo on this reaction show today. We gave it a go with Adam. He tried plugging it in. He sounded like he was distant, and he also was. I was listening to myself. So we're doing the solo tonight. And really, am I solo when I have so many 12s here in chat with me that can help us complain about this loss together? As the Seahawks, they do take a loss. They lose 30-23 to the Pittsburgh Steelers, a loss at home, and a frustrating one because, it was frustrating because of how the entire day went. We looked down the schedule. We put out this rooting guide so we can show folks, here are the teams that we should root for and root against and that sort of thing. And of course, we recognize that we need to root for our Seahawks. And but there were a lot of other games going on today that we wanted to break. Well, it's not necessarily that it had to happen, but almost every single game that we wanted to break a certain way for our Seahawks, it broke the opposite way, including our loss to our infuriating loss to the Pittsburgh Steelers. And part of the reason why it's infuriating, and if you're joining us here in chat on live, I think most of the commentary goes toward the Seahawks defense, the tackling. It was on display for the entire game at just how much more physical the Steelers offense was, and really the entire Steelers team. We've got Scott Campbell Photography in the chat with a $7.99 super chat. Yep, I'm done with Hurt. The defense and getting embarrassed at home in such a pathetic way again. It's a tough way to lose, especially when it's such another, a physically imposing loss, when they can just hand the ball off to their running backs and pick up yardage at will. I think if Adam were here, he would say that we got jellied in this game, and there's no real nice way to put it apart from that. We've got Samuel Gelber coming in with the $12 super chat. Andy Chalk's game with either stress or hate in my heart. Gino deserved to win today, and Rudolph's stupid face didn't. When it came down to the quarterback play, I mean, obviously having that run game for Rudolph, it set him up for those easy passes. And when you look, he didn't have to throw really anything in terms of contested throws, because if it wasn't there, he knew that he could throw it away or and live to see another day or hand the ball off. And when it was that easy on the backup quarterback, that's what made it frustrating. Geno Smith, of course, in terms of better quarterback play, if you're having to compare the two, it's tough to compare because you have Geno with a dirty pocket most of the day, playing without his right tackle for the second half of the game on the side that normally TJ Watt lines up on. And fortunately, we didn't have a big TJ Watt game. Instead, we had some other dude coming off the other side with Charles Cross on. This is the one in bad play of Geno Smith's day when he held the ball just a little bit too long. Opportunity to come back and tie the game up in the fourth quarter. He holds the ball too long. They even chip on Cross's side. Cross ends up whiffing. The ball swatted out of Geno's hands. And at that point in the game, then the Steelers able to kick a field goal, put the game, essentially make it to where it would have been tough to dig out of that hole. Seahawks had some attempts, but yes, thank you to Sam for the $12 super chat. We've got our Ryan 911, our live executive producer, with the $9.99 super chat. We're not done yet. On to the next. It's tough to be this optimistic, Ryan, right after a tough loss. But yes, the Seahawks, it's a good reminder that they are not quite done, because they still have an opportunity to pull it out with a win over the Arizona Cardinals. Now, the Arizona Cardinals gave all they could to the Philadelphia Eagles. They get the win in week 17. So we know that the Cardinals still playing tough. They're not playing for draft picks. So that's not going to be an easy game next week either, because we know that the Cardinals are going to come strong then in the next week. And with as uh, physical as the Pittsburgh run game can be, James Conner and the Arizona Cardinals, they can be physical too. So it's going to be another tough matchup. Nothing easy happening. And then we're going to have things break our way depending on who wins this game this evening between the Packers and Vikings. Then we're going to need to flip-flop and want that team to lose the following week. I'm not sure where the Saints play into this as well because they got the win. We needed the Saints to lose, but the Saints still in the playoff picture too. I'm just not sure how it plays all out with our Seahawks. Carly Perkins coming in with a $9.99 or with a $1.99 super chat. Thanks for my weekly Seahawks therapy. That sucked. Carly, if you ever just want to pay money in the super chat just to tell me that the Seahawks sucked and that makes you feel better in some way, I suppose I'm here for you, Carly. Shane Turner Acoustic with a 99 Australian super chat. Thanks to Shane. Nathan Tolley in at $9.99. What is this defense? I fail 16 games in to understand if it's coaching, personnel, or both. We seem uninspired. Haven't been this frustrated watching this team in a while. Nathan, it could be a little bit of both. Let's talk about personnel because personnel is the easy one to talk about with this game against the Steelers. You had your starting linebacker out. You have you kind of expected to see, well, you were hoping to see if Devin Bush playing in the place there could come in and show something against his former team. We didn't see a whole lot of big Devin Bush tackles. We just didn't see a lot even from up front. So that makes it, the guys up front makes it hard on the linebackers. They don't have that big Al Woods stopper on the interior. And then on the outside, once you get to the edges, they're not physical enough. We saw one good play from Devin Witherspoon where he made a tackle in the backfield, and every other time it's the guys hanging on. It's the guys missing tackles. So I think a big part of it, I think it tends to be personnel, especially with the injuries in this case, with the corners, they weren't playing physical enough on the outside. And I think with the interior, they got to get bigger up front, and they got moved. I mean, the defensive line was just getting moved off the ball the entire day. So can you coach guys to be better in the run game? You can, and play the gaps a little bit more soundly. You can. But when it comes down to tackling, I think part of that too is the player. And I mean, when you're in position and you're getting run over, I guess that's what leads me more toward the talent side than the coaching side. But it's a little bit of both. And let's see. Catching up on the other, I want to make sure to get to everyone in the super chat. And so apologies if I'm missing some of your commentary in the regular chat. Adam Emmert watching along. They need 10 more Witherspoons in terms of energy and physicality. See, I think that goes down to more of that physicality side. And it doesn't even have to be size, right? Because a guy like Devin Witherspoon, he's not the biggest guy, but he's a guy who plays physical and is able to match the opposition's physicality. And you see other players that they may give effort, but they just don't have that same type of physical presence that Witherspoon has. Twilight Crush, Bush was terrible. Yeah, not a good day for Devin Bush, and we needed that from our Seahawks on a day where he was filling in. And part of that might just be a size thing and going up against running back. We talked about how big Najee Harris was, and then you have kind of that on the opposite side of the ball. It's not like Jalen Warren's small, but he is a guy who can break a lot of tackles. So yeah, missing Brooks today for sure. Stu Lowe saying we need to get Reek into the weight room. It may be. Amy Holmes coming in. Need some guys to stop the run next year to stop the whiners. And that's a big part of just how this defense, it's so apparent because even, go back, the games against the Rams, it felt like they got out physicaled against the Rams. The Seahawks, they play in a physical division. And if you want to talk about coaching and from that perspective, it doesn't seem like if I'm going to give one criticism to Pete Carroll, It would be that, just being explosive, having your identity be being explosive in terms of play calling. I don't think that's enough. I think wanting to be a physical football team that dominates your opponent, and the part of the way to do that is through the run game. And even in a day like this, where they had the opportunity to be physical, and they just weren't taking. Now, part of that could be injuries to Kenneth Walker. Looking at some of the stats here, you talk about being physical in the run game. Najee Harris, 27 carries, 122 yards. Jalen Warren, 13 carries, 75 yards. So 40 rushing attempts, 200 yards. And that's really what helped dominate the game today. It helped, I think, inflate some of the Mason Rudolph stats because, as Jonathan Vilma pointed out throughout the broadcast, then when they were having to bring a safety down into the box to help stop the run, then Mason Rudolph was finding guys. They got open opportunities down the field because the pass rush. They weren't getting to the quarterback. One sack on the day for Mason Rudolph. And so the defensive line just not getting to him. And the story of the game right here, 10 carries, 53 yards for Kenneth Walker. Geno Smith, he had the one nice long 25-yard run. But then if Ken Walker, not healthy, only able to get 10 carries, Zach Charbonnet probably deserves more than 2 carries on the day. You did get a little bit of Charbonnet in the passing game, 5 receptions, 39 yards. But overall, they kept it. It was more through the air. They could have been more physically imposing, and that's the part I think that's frustrating when it comes down to coaching. BGZ 206, $2 super chat. Seahawks defense is Charmin soft. It's tough to. I can't argue with you. It feels that way, and it felt like the Steelers took that to their advantage in this game. We've got Eaglet Snupper in with the super chat, $5. If Spoon can make the tackles, he can at his size. Throwing the running back like he did, it isn't an excuse. It's all about effort and accountability. And I think that's where it comes down, though, to your types of the personnel that you have. And you can find, people have been killing George Pickens on the opposite side for not giving the effort and not being held accountable. And he's really good in other aspects of the game. So how do you find that type of player who can be the complementary type of player who can give that effort, consistently be physical, and then also hold them accountable? That might come down to personnel. But again, we have seen this defense make choices in terms of accountability and pull guys. But again, with so many injuries, don't know if that's completely possible this late in the season. And again, I think it just comes down to the Steelers then being able to take advantage of that. Our Ryan 911, Eaglet Snupper, an outstanding name. I agree. We got SX22. I'm never going to say this about another guy again, but Geno's groin looked good today. Yes. Geno, he had a good day. It's just he was playing from behind. The thing that got this off to a rough start right from the beginning, and I don't know if I can hold this against Pete the way that the game started, but when they had a 4th and 1 opportunity on the first drive of the game after the Steelers, they go for it on 4th down, but then the Seahawks defense able to make a stop. They did only make one punt all day, but they did get a 4th down stop. So that was essentially a turnover from the defense's point of view, just not enough turnovers overall and taking advantage of that. But the Seahawks, they gotten the opportunity. They had a 4th and 1. They're right about midfield, and you're thinking, okay, I can understand not wanting to go for it because the Steelers, they have their backup quarterback in, pin them deep inside the 5-yard line, make Mason Rudolph drive 95 yards. We hadn't quite seen the physicality of that Steelers run game yet, but you expect Dixon then to pin him deep and really stymie the Steelers early on. And Dixon punts it into the end zone. and then they go on an 80-yard drive and score a touchdown. And it's at that point to where you see the way that they're running the ball. That turn just on that, I think, was probably a motivating factor for the Steelers to then go from that giving up on 4th and 1, and then the defense giving up an 80-yard drive. I think that can have an effect on an opposing team, especially coming into Lumen Field. And way too many yellow terrible towels there, by the way. But Samuel Gilbert coming in, started the game with 4 straight passes. It seemed like the entire game plan was to do with what the opponent wouldn't expect. I think we've seen this, though, from the Seahawks, and just they tend to be a more passing-oriented team. And a part of that, too, could be you've got some big guys up front with the Steelers. But if you're going to drop back and pass routinely, you need to get protection. We saw some good protection early on, especially when Cross was in there. He handled TJ Watt pretty well. But it goes back, I think what you're saying, Sam, too, is that the game plan was more about what the Steelers' weakness than really trying to impose your own physicality. So you're not setting the tone in terms of being a physical football team. And that's where they have an opportunity. That's where coaches have the opportunity to do that. And maybe they didn't necessarily take it. I thought some of those good opening drives were good. They did have some really nice runs with K9 getting into the end zone early on. And just not able to be that way consistently. SX22, Jamal is good in the run game. He's just not great at reading the D and in the pass game. I don't know. Jamal Adams inactive. And obviously put in injured reserve, so we're not going to see him for the rest of the season. We may not see him back in a Seahawks uniform. Would Jamal Adams have made a difference of him being out there instead of Devin Bush? A healthy Jamal Adams, maybe. Where Jamal is at, where we've seen him through most of the year, probably not so much. Nathan Tolley back in, $4.99 super chat. Run the damn ball. Hit your reads at quarterback. Win the game. Also tackle. We are so close to being a good team. They had some effective runs early. Quarterback play, fine in this game. Tackling is where it was the most deficient. And a good point Adam making in the chat here, 37-33 time of possession. And really where this time of possession came into play was that first quarter, because they allowed the Steelers to possess the ball. Then the Seahawks offense goes 3 and out, and the Steelers get the ball back. They have that 80-yard drive. It essentially takes up the entire first quarter. And just in that quarter alone, the deficiency in time of possession, it was probably equal when you play it out the rest of the game. Obviously, the Seahawks gave up a possession with the Geno Smith fumble late in the fourth quarter. But early on, the Steelers took the advantage of that time of possession. And Carly saying that's less time of possession than I expected. Yeah, it almost just the way the game felt when I saw the time of possession numbers post game, it felt more like the Steelers had possessed it for 40 minutes or so. Eaglet Supper saying good teams isn't enough to win championships. Not good enough. But Seahawks, they still may have an opportunity to get into the playoffs, depending on how things play out. But you're going to see a lot more of that. This is the type of football that you're going to see in the playoffs from a team like the Steelers. The 49ers play this way physically. Now, we'll have to see what happens with Christian McCaffrey, because he did go down with injury in this game today against the Commanders. But I'm guessing with a couple weeks rest, he'll probably be fine. The Lions, you see them playing physical football, and despite some of the coaching decisions and how things could have gone differently with the Lions, they are a physical football team, not just in the run game, but they're going to be physical all across the board. So you're kind of, and then Dan Quinn coaching that Cowboys defense. I don't know if you could say that offensively they're a physically imposing team, and that's maybe more the style that if you do get into the playoffs, you maybe hope for a rematch against a team like the Cowboys, because they don't have that physically imposing style on offense that, once again, maybe you can hang in there and see what happens in the playoffs. Holy hand grenade in the chat. lobbying already to fire Pete Carroll. Let's wait till the end of the season. Let's wait to see what rolls out here. But maybe you've already made up your mind, and that's fine. But it goes back. One of the things that Adam and I were talking about in one of the previous shows, what are some of the things that you're looking for when it comes to coaching? Because there's going to be that opportunity for a conversation, and see what happens when the offseason rolls around. I'm struggling here. We've got Sojin with a chat earlier. Can we agree Pete might not be good at coaching tackling other than the LOB? It's been bad tackling. It's a question that if they are doing enough of it early on in practice, or is it a mentality thing? I am curious to know what that difference is. Is it a Dan Quinn thing because he was coaching in that LOB era? I can understand where that question comes from. Twilight Crush saying, Pete is going to gaslight that we were close, but we got crushed by a worse team. Steelers, it's hard to argue that they're a worse team the way that they played today in terms of their physical football. I mean, in terms of that nature of play, they kind of look like the better team out there. They do have a worse quarterback. That's maybe where that's maybe where the difference is, because I don't know if I saw a worse team on the opposite side of the ball, especially when they can play the way they did. I well-coached team, good running team. The Steelers were a better team today. Also, those punts, we did talk about that already, and I saw that in the chat earlier. SX22, here are the positives. Gino, other than the fumble, played pretty well. K9 played awesome until he got banged up again, and Spoon was great when he was out there. I would have liked to see a little bit more from Spoon on coming off the injury. So, Adam making the point, Pete isn't going anywhere, but if Paul Allen still was here, would you consider a change? It's an interesting question. It's, again, these are questions that we're going to be talking about quite a bit in the off season. Carly, I'm not surprised we lost to them, to be honest. It was, I had concerns going into this game. Mike Tomlin, a good coach, and as we pointed out, has never coached a team to a losing record. I think they solidified that stat today against Pete Carroll and the Seahawks. So, yeah, it's he's gonna find a way to bring this team and find a way to win with the team that he has. And I think that's one of the impressive things about Mike Tomlin. Brandon, when is the collab with Brandon from Hawks Nest? He's down if you are. Hey, we're always down for collaborations here, especially in the off season. During the regular season, it's kind of tough because we get going and there's just not a lot of time in the schedule for collaborations. But hey, once we get to the off season, we'll talk Seahawks with just about anybody. We've got more people coming in via the chat. Crumpled Zinc saying we could definitely lose to the Cards next week. Again, if they play the type of physical football that they're capable of and the Seahawks defense can't hold up to that, it could be a tough back and forth game with the Cardinals. And on the road, it's going to be tough. All right, SX22, that freaking play when Spoon ran down that running back from the opposite side of the field and then finished him like a Mortal Kombat fatality was awesome. One of the highlight plays of the game for sure, SX22. And Carly saying upside, if we miss the playoffs, I get more free time. Yes, that it does free up our January just a little bit, doesn't it, Carly? Well, I do want to free up some of everyone's free time here on New Year's Eve. It's a holiday. We could be enjoying a family. Shoot, we could be enjoying some football coming up here against the Vikings and Packers. I don't know necessarily who to root for. I just know that next week, I need the team that wins tonight to lose next week. And that's about where I'm at, where it comes to my rooting guide for the rest of the evening. And I think with that, there's only one thing left to say. Go Hawks.